And good morning and afternoon, Jake, and everyone out in the audience. We're BizWiz. My name is Kyle.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jake, and I'm here with my pal Kyle, and we are interested to tap into the Reddit sphere to talk about business and entrepreneurship and startup and fintech and anything else that you might like to discuss. And we love questions if anyone has any questions along the way. Kyle, I haven't had a
Yeah,
chance to catch up with you in a little while. How's everything going? How was your week?
it's been really good. I spent a part of last week kind of reconnecting with my alma mater, the University of Texas. I sit on a steering committee, and so it's really nice to come together with the school and learn a little bit about how they're responding to needs in the marketplace for top talent and to reconnect with some of the folks that I went to school with and see how they're doing. So I always learn a ton. There's a lot of people doing some really interesting things with our old degree program, and yeah, I spent a good deal of time doing that. How about you? What's new with you this week?
I've had a really busy week, and it has been a little bit of a roller coaster ride, as it can be in this kind of startup space. We had someone who I didn't ask them to invest in my company. They asked me to invest in my company, and then a couple weeks later, at the last moment, they backed out. So
Oh,
it
that's really weird for them to be so forward about it.
caused me a little bit of a disruption. But luckily we are in a good space, and we are gonna do just fine.
All right,
So
very
that was a little bit
good.
of my roller coaster. So tell me a little bit about your school. What was it like? What was it like there?
University of Texas. It's top five school. It's always ranked. I think ours was the number two management information systems program. Very rigorous, the largest university in the country. Really tough to get in. Really tight alumni program. So I've been operating on the steering committee for the McCombs School of Business at UT for the past 20 years, helping to drive the program in response to things that are changing in the tech environment specifically. I think it's worth pointing out that MIS is pretty tech heavy with a business focus, right? So what's going on as things like fintech are, I had a couple of guys actually that were in the fintech space. One was the chief availability officer for a fintech company here in town that was like, I think they're hiring 500 people, and I think they're at about 3,000 right now. So that's the kind of thing where we're trying to stay cutting edge, trying to keep the degree relevant for what's going on out in the high tech space in the business world. So we come together a couple of times a year to help drive that.
That sounds really
So
cool. It's great that you
yeah,
could stay connected to your school, and I take it it's somewhat close by still to you, or
yeah, it's about 5 miles away, so I didn't go too far. Austin was great. It's like I moved here to go to school and loved it and stayed. It's a pretty typical story.
Austin is supposed
Yeah.
to be a really awesome place. I really want to get down there for a visit sometime soon.
Yeah, I'd be glad to have you down here. There's a lot to do. Um, but it's funny that you mentioned that story about somebody wanting to invest. Now, I imagine you probably put a lot of effort into just attracting investors to so having one just drop in out of the blue and want to invest. How like what's the story behind that?
Well, so we have gone through a friends and family round. We've raised around $80,000. We've used about 70% of that money. We have a pretty low burn rate, so there's no real concerns. But this is someone who came in looking just to invest a small amount of money, and I didn't really need it. Like, we're really looking to raise around the 500,000 to 700,000 level through angel investors.
Yeah.
And so this wasn't something I really needed, but I started to get used to the idea of having like a little bit more running room, and there was a few things I could maybe push with a little bit more capital. So I started getting used to the idea and agreed to it, and then it kind of didn't happen. And so it just that's the life of a startup. There's a little bit of a roller coaster there, ups and downs,
Yeah.
and that's one of them. Um, but it's been a crazy week. The interesting thing that I find, I don't know if you'll find this in the franchise space as much, but there's a lot of people that come to you with interests. They say they want to do something, or they say they're good at things, but there's only like 1 out of every 10 people that come to you that say they really want to do something. That like the thing I'm finding really unique about this space and about people like partnerships and who you work with is there's only so many people that show up and actually bring something. Like they actually show up with something.
That,
There's a lot of people that
that's
say
very
they're going to show
relatable.
up with something, but then they kind of don't, or they kind of have to. But then there's some people like people and some like I was talking to someone earlier today who like made some UI design for me, and I was like, "Can I pay you for that?"
Mhm.
And they were like, "No, don't worry about it."
Hmm.
And I like people like that. I like people who they want to bring you something and they want to help you. They're not just there like, "Hey, pay me first, and then I'll build something for you." So I love
Yeah.
people like. Do you find that in franchise, like people that say they want to do it, but then there's actually people that show up and like are ready to dig in and be a part.
Yeah, it's that's quite relatable actually. And I when I'm interacting with people in the public sphere, I'm talking to sizable crowds. You might remember last week, for example, that I was over at Fort Hood and it was a room full of people, probably 40 or so. And there's a lot of people who are there who are interested in running a business. And there's people who, of that pool, if you think of it like a funnel almost, there's people who actually want to have a conversation about it with me. And we do that. And there's a subset of those that for whom it actually sounds interesting and they're willing to go through the process of researching, right? So that's kind of a big step right there to actually, expect people to put in effort to run their own business. And keeping in mind that most of these folks are either doing a bootstrap sort of financing, or they're combining that with a loan in some way. But when it really starts to get real and it really starts to get to the point where we're starting to write big checks and move money around,
You start to
things get real pretty fast.
filter out some of that kind of wheat from the chaff about who's like really, really serious about it.
Yeah, exactly. And that's, when things get real like that, really separates the dilettantes and the tire kickers from people, the entrepreneurs, I call them, is we all want to be entrepreneurs, right? So we're entrepreneurs until you actually do it, until you make the step, right? And so people who get that far,
That's
and I
a
think that
that's
the
a great
thing
topic, the
separate,
entrepreneur. We may have to
yeah.
come back to that. And so, does that touch on one of the subjects that you wanted to talk about today?
Well, yeah. I mean, because, one of the things that separates the wheat from the chaff, like you said, is people that are actually going to take that step, get over the fear. If we dig into the fear, one of the things we're constantly worried about is how do you pay the bills while you're building a business? Now, I don't know about you. Every business that I've built, I haven't really gone through the act of raising serious investor money. I've been a bootstrapper by and large, and most of the people that I work with are similar. And so when you're doing that, I think that there's this, and you were talking about burn rate a minute ago, and the way you keep the burn rates down is not to pay gigantic salaries, at least in the beginning, right? So, and certainly with some bootstrappers, you're not making any money until you're turning a profit. And there's that period of time between when you start and you're actually at break even. And the big question is, well, how do I pay the bills and keep the ship afloat at home until I can start pulling money out of the business?
And so,
Um,
what does that look like in the franchise space, and for some of the people that come to you looking to start businesses? What kind of advice do you give them?
Well, I think I kind of dive straight in with, hey, this is the dark side of entrepreneurship. Is it's kind of an exercise
Risky,
in frugality.
risky. There's risk involved, and there's hard work
Yeah,
involved.
yeah. There's a lot of hard work and there's a lot of risk, and I think the thing that makes people really uncomfortable in that beginning, that valley of death is what I call it, between startup and break even.
Death. I love that.
Yeah, because you watch your cash flow. It's like in the red as you keep dumping money into it. And some of it's yours, some of it might be a loan, some of it's investor money. But everyone's expecting that to go into the black at some point. And until you do, it's an uncomfortable place. And why is that? Because we've disconnected. This is a big difference between having a job and running a business, is especially in the beginning, you're not showing up, keeping a seat warm and getting your food pellet every 2 weeks or whatever your paycheck, right? You've disconnected that immediate gratification of a monetary reward for all the work that you've done. It's more like starting up this big flywheel. And the thing that scares people is not only this disconnect of immediate gratification, but how do you pay the bills? because the mortgage ain't going to pay itself, right? The family isn't going to feed itself. It needs to come from somewhere. So I advise people on strategies on how to deal with that.
Do you ever
Now,
get people that have kind of like a buyer's remorse? Because as you get a couple months into it, and as the skin in the game starts to get a little constrictive, I mean, you must be close. You're getting revenues and you're getting close to taking a profit, but you're not there, and you've been working at it a couple months. You get to that kind of that point where it's a little darkest before dawn. Do you ever have people that come to you that are like struggling with that moment?
I've not really. It's not as bad in franchising it is in startups, and here's why. Because one thing that you can count on is that you've got a game plan. Here's a good story. I helped a guy get into a senior care business, and about 2-3 months into that business, I met him at Starbucks for coffee, and he showed up with his little wrapped Prius with it's all branded on the side, and I asked him, "How's it going?" And he's like, "Well, I'm not cash flow break even yet, but I know that I have to do these things every day until I get to profitability. And I've got a plan. I've got a plan that they gave me, and I'm just executing on it. And I'm like, halfway through that plan, and I'm halfway there. And I can see the light at the end of the tunnel. So having that plan, whether it's provided by a franchise or if it's something you do at a startup, you develop it yourself. I think that's the key to getting over that misery of that valley of death, phase in the beginning. But
I think there's got to be a focus there. You've got to focus on the things that are going to bring you revenue without the distractions. There's a lot of marketing you can do that won't necessarily directly bring you revenues. Not that you can abandon marketing, but it takes a lot of focus to really deliver.
so I know that in franchising anyway, to some extent it's cut and dried in terms of where do you put your effort to generate revenue, and there's kind of a known constellation of things you can invest in and tweak and manage and eliminate the ones that don't work. But what about what it is that you're doing? You know, have you run into that in the startup space? I mean, it's a little more freeform, I imagine.
I mean, yes, the startup space is much more freeform, and being in this space, I meet a lot of people who, particularly at this point, have their own startups and their own startup businesses, particularly with an orbit around tech and fintech. And I was on
Hmm.
a boot camp actually yesterday. I spoke on a panel yesterday. And there's a young gentleman on there who just successfully raised, $8 million,
That's
and
great.
he is very sharp and speaks a certain kind of way, and I can completely see why he's the guy that made it. There's a lot of people out there with great ideas. There's a lot of people out there that think they have a great idea, but every business and every founder is kind of a snowflake and has their own flavor. And definitely in this space, we don't have the
Hmm.
guidance that some of these franchises that you work with have, where there's a little bit more of a guided
Yeah.
path, and they're a little bit more coached. We're kind of out here in the wild where there can be a lot of distractions, and that's why focus is so important. But we do have the same levers and challenges. I like how you talked about the Death Valley in trying to get those revenues to come in as you're pumping money into these things.
So, I've got strategies that I advise on for paying the bills until that money comes in. What do you typically, what are you seeing in the startup space? How are people getting the bills paid while they're trying to get the profitability?
You see all kinds. I mean, you just see all kinds in this place. Some people, I'm always kind of like a little jealous of those people that post on Reddit that are like, "Hey, I created a website last week and I got 1,000 users and brought in this much revenue." They're
Yeah.
out there. There's so many more founders and startups that work at it for a year before they bring in revenues, and they work at it for even longer before they can get profitable. And if you're raising money, you have a lot of money going into a business where the revenues may not, you come on top of that for a long time or ever. But you have established that you have a concept that people are willing to take a risk on. They invest in you. They invest in your concept, and I think it's hard to compare those two spaces a little bit. There's definitely some similarities, and there's
Hmm.
definitely urgency to bring revenues in, and there's definitely urgency to get into the black. But there's a lot less of I think a a net below us on this side than on the
Yeah.
franchise side, where you're really there to bracket and help people along that path.
Yeah. When you're raising money, do you build in the cost of paying the people who are on the team?
Wow, I mean, this is a really phenomenal question, right? People on my team are in for sweat equity. You know, they're in for a
Hmm.
percentage of the company, which over the long term, if we exit and if we're successful, could lead to money. But there's no value in it today. Even if someone invests in us, there's no value in it until we actually exit a priced round. So people are
Hmm.
working strictly off their own back because they believe in this mission, and they're willing to put in that sweat equity. Now, if we raise money, some of that would be partitioned for paying people salary and paying them for projects. And one of the things I need, desperately at this point is, full-time developers rather than people are working, sweat equity and kind of doing it part-time. Um, but one thing investors don't like to see, and you'll see this sometimes on like Shark Tank and Dragon's Den, is people try to raise money and they're like, well, what are we paying for? And they're like, oh, I want you to pay my salary. Investors don't like that.
Hmm.
Investors don't like to invest in salary, and they don't want to invest like in debt either. They want to invest in your future. So you have to be willing to work along those parameters.
Well, at some point, people have got to get paid, right? I mean, I imagine that a critical element of any pitch is the team, not just the idea, but the people. The way you keep people is, put food on the table. I mean, at what point does that happen?
Um, that is the big question. That is the big question, and I don't know how to answer that. That is for the eight ball to dictate. But you can't do it forever, so you have to
Yeah.
stay focused, and you have to get those revenues coming in the door, and you have to raise that money. But that is kind of the $1 million question you're asking there, Kyle.
Yeah, I know. I didn't think it would be easy to answer, but there's nothing easy about what we're doing here, what you're doing. It's um,
Well, it wouldn't
you
be
know,
wouldn't be any fun if wouldn't be any fun if it wasn't a challenge and if there wasn't
that's
some
right.
risk involved.
That's why they call it the hero's journey. For people who are bootstrappers, some of the things that I help advise on is like, how do you pay the bills, right? And there are some big things. A lot of folks that I'm working with, they're either coming out of transition from the corporate world, or maybe they've got family, or maybe they got some assets. And so, the big things I say, either, use that severance, use that unemployment, compensation as a runway to build something, right?
Yeah.
It's probably not going to pay all the bills, but it'll cover some of them, right? It'll keep you from living completely off of your balance sheet, which is drawing down savings just to pay the mortgage. Often if you got a spouse that works, or maybe some other family member who can chip in and support with some of the bills. I mean, it's kind of scraping here and there wherever you can, and getting frugal, keeping things under control. I've seen people that go from $12,000 in burn rate per month down to like 3, just by eliminating some really big things. Like, do you really need that country club membership while you're getting to break even, or can you just suspend that until you're profitable again, right? That kind of
I think
thing.
I think you touch on a key point that is true maybe on both sides, right? Is that running room? How much running room do you have? And when you have a
Yep.
pressure point, like if you know you have enough money to make it by to 4 months, then you've got to do the math. And can I get to black or close by that 4 month period? And
Yeah. Yeah.
I think that's two key concepts, right? Is one is how much running room do you have? Is it enough? And do you have the mental fortitude to make sure that happens?
Yep. Yep. And there's some simple math that I encourage people to do is figure out your burn rate, right? How much cash you burning at home every month. Figure out your fume date, which is at what point are you going on fumes? And if you decide to start a business, make sure that that business has the opportunity to generate cash before your fume date, right? Otherwise, you can go as deep a debt as you want. You can be as unprofitable as you want, but as soon as you run out of cash, it's game over. That's the cardinal rule of business. That's one of Bill Solomon's 5 rules of cash. He's a famous Harvard professor.
What are
There's
the
a
five?
number of them.
Do you know
The
'em?
most important one is never run out of cash.
What are all five? Do you know them off the top of your head, or?
More cash is better than less cash. Cash sooner is better than cash later. Um, I forget those, but
It's
never
all
run out
pretty
of
obvious.
cash.
It's all pretty obvious stuff, but when you say it, like
Yeah, it's pretty
it makes
obvious.
sense. It's very important. I think some of the best business advice I got when I was younger, and I was out having drinks with a friend, and it was a casual conversation. But he said, "Do you know how to make money in the restaurant industry?" And the answer was, "Make a lot of money first." If you have a lot of money to
Yeah,
invest
that's,
in a restaurant and to make it look pretty and make it look a certain way,
yeah.
it takes a lot of
We have a
money.
joke down here. You know how to make a small fortune in ranching? Start with a big fortune.
Yeah, yeah. Well, money does go to money, and I think there's a reason for that.
Yeah, but seriously, I think most people are just trying to use the capital as wisely as possible to get to break even and make that transition away. And I think that this is what a lot of our audience is going to be interested in is how do I go from, I need this job every day to I don't ever need to work for somebody else again and I'm running a business. And two of my clients this week are kind of inspiring in the ways that they're doing that, covering the bills at home. One guy is in the military. He's retiring and he's going to have a pension and it covers his bills at home. So he's effectively got this and like endless runway of cash. And what he wants to do now is take the excess cash that he's got left over, put that in a business and use his pension to cover the expenses. That's beautiful. The other guy that I met with last week, he's an executive. He's one of the top level executives at a big high tech, a well known high tech company here in town. And he's gunning for his boss's job and thinks he'll get that for several years and then he'll probably retire. So in the meantime, what he's going to do is he's going to keep his job, run franchises on the side, and just stamp them out bit by bit, year over year, bring it until by the time he retires, 8 to 10 years from now, he's got a whole string of franchises that are generating the same cash that he's making at this job, which is a lot. And then he can just step right off. And basically that's his retirement plan, is to run these businesses semi-absentee and still have that cash flow that he's used to. So
But
there's a number of ways that people can do it.
that's kind of a higher level strategy, right? That's someone who has a lot more capital and a lot more liquidity, and that's a great investment strategy, right? Like, what's my
Yeah.
retirement plan? I don't just want to sit this money in a 401k. I don't just want to sit this money maybe in some real estate, though that could be an option. And having a bunch of
Yep.
local franchises seems like a pretty smart investment.
Yeah, it can be. If it's a good fit for what you want to do with your life and how you want to, guide your career, it can be a great option. Um, and
He
so
sounds very unique because he sounds like he's chosen a few different franchises. Did I read that right from what you were mentioning?
he's looking at multiples, but his goal right now is to just narrow down to one and then just to replicate those over throughout a metro area market.
So he will choose kind of one industry and then expand around the area. Yeah, very
Yep,
cool.
that's right. That's the plan. So, yeah, that's there's a number of ways that people do this. I mean, having pensions and jobs is really nice. It gets a little bit more tricky when it's like, well, what if you don't have a job and you go into business? That's harder to do. I mean, can you relate to that?
Um, I coming into the startup space in the fintech space, it was a big jump. Um, but I can't really relate to that. I think it's a little bit of a different situation with people trying to go from either not working or from a job to the franchise space. Do most of the people you work with then they have kind of a day job and they're thinking about transitioning over?
Well, either they have a job that they hate and they're looking for an exit path, or they lost a job and they don't want to go through the hassle of working for somebody else again. So that's the majority case. Yeah.
That's one thing that resonates with me. Now that I've gone out on my own, I don't know how I could possibly ever go back to like
Yeah.
corporate environment or working for someone else. I
I
mean,
hear
you've
you. It
been
sounds
very
unpleasant.
independent for a very long time, haven't you?
Yeah, yeah, it's been about 20 years now, and I love it. I can't imagine living life any other way, and I know that, and that's the thing is, I don't want people to look at entrepreneurship and watch the dream die because it seems impossible. You can get there, but damn it, you got to have determination and get over your fear. Otherwise, it's never going to happen. You can scurry around from one illusion of security to another for the rest of your life, or you can do what they call the hero's journey, right? I mean, it's called that for a reason. You're seeing some of the ups and downs this week. It's you got to take your lumps sometimes, but the reward is there. Just got to keep at it.
It was the hero's journey. That is a great way to consider it. And
Yeah.
so, what's on the schedule for you in the coming week? Last week, I think you supported some people in the military environment. Plus, you were doing some networking at your school. Are there any other big events or kind of groups that you're looking to support in the coming period?
Well, I do a lot of volunteer education with an organization called SCORE, and this is going to be a shameless plug for a nonprofit government entity. But SCORE is a really great resource, and the SBDC, the Small Business Development Centers, both of them are government entities that are designed to help people who want to start businesses. And I wish I had known about that. I think anyone can benefit from SCORE if they're starting a business. They can help with mentorship, business planning, obtaining capital, and getting started on the right foot, just some basic block and tackle on how to do things like marketing and accounting and stuff like that. But I think the mentorship program is really valuable. So, I help people in those realms, and I look forward to working with them. And other than that, I got to say, I'm kind of trying to detach myself from the news cycle, quite frankly. That's distracting me, and and get some more sleep and do a lot of rowing. So more life than business, right? Um,
Absolutely, sir. So, to
what about
everyone in the
you?
audience, my name is Jake, and this is Kyle. We are doing a show. We are hoping to focus on business entrepreneurship, the startup space, fintech, and things of that nature. And we love questions if anyone has one. Some of the questions that have come our way are a little bit off our topic. But if there's any questions that do have to do with business, you're welcome to throw them in the chat and ask. And yeah, as you point out, Kyle, we don't want to get too political, but it has been a very intense week around the world.
Yeah, it has, and so I'm, finding ways to just chillax from all that, and enjoy some hobbies and tinker time and family time. What about you? What you got coming up this week?
Um, my life is a roller coaster at the moment. I've got an amazing team. Again, as we talked about early on, they are working for Sweat Equity. We have many team members that are, kind of working part time. They have great skills, but they don't have a full schedule to contribute. And so we have some systems that we're building that are at like 90%. They've been kind of, when you restart your computer, and you've got a meeting coming up, and the computer kind of says like, "Hey, this is going to take 10 minutes." And
Yeah,
that 10 minutes starts to
updating.
like 40 minutes and your meeting's coming up. That's a little
Not
bit,
now.
yeah, that's a little bit how it's going with my team, right? Like we're so close from doing some very cool things.
Yeah.
We're trying to build this instant decisioning system in the equipment finance space. So it's very exciting. And we're starting to meet lots of cool people who are interested in what we're doing. And, it is a roller coaster, man. It is not for the faint of heart.
I, yeah, I believe you. Um, I'm curious. So these folks, most folks have a day job. Is that how they're supporting themselves while you're getting this up and running?
Yes, I am. Hold on. Someone might have a question. I'm trying to figure it out. Sorry about that. Yes, so I am the full time member of my team. I've got some people working part time. They are building something really amazing. Um, but if I just had a few more people working like full time, we could just move like a bit quicker. And we
Yeah.
need to move quicker to get to the things that we talked about that were very important today, which is revenues, or raising money. It's hard to do that without going. Someone says they have a fintech question, but I didn't see their actual question.
Hmm. There was something that I did years ago. I don't know if it's going to be useful or applicable to your situation. But when I was building software, what I would try to do is find a client that could really benefit from it and actually work with them on a consulting basis. It's kind of billable, so I can get
Yeah.
some people on board full time. That was how I was able to build the team in the very beginning, was do some billable work. We had an agreement in place where our team, our company, my company could keep the intellectual property, but we would be, directly helping the business that would end up being a client, a kind of a larger business, almost like a partnership in a way. I don't know if you'd considered that maybe with a potential customer.
We are looking to do that, and we've got some early users. We've got people using our platform, but now, and I kind of that's kind of the trouble I'm facing, Kyle. Is I would like to do more of that, but because I'm
Mhm.
at 90%, like I'm kind of waiting for things to just get a little bit further. But then it's taking some time. But if I can get this thing, it doesn't have to work. Like when I say 100%, that means it's working. That doesn't mean it's working beautifully. But I need it to be working before I can do some of that kind of consulting stuff. And so I'm hoping to get to that space soon. I definitely think we've got more users out there. I definitely think there's more revenues out there for the product that we're building. Um, but I just have to be patient in pushing things a little bit further. And we are going to be excited to use something called machine learning. And that was something I was interested to ask you about today. This is more
Mm.
my space than your space. But
Well,
are
maybe we can have that as a bookmark for our next week's discussion.
you want to do that next week? Let's do that next week.
Yeah, we're coming up to the end of our half hour here.
Everyone out there, we are looking to do a half-hour show every week at 1 p.m. EST, which I believe is 12 p.m. in your time zone, Kyle. And we're looking to
Yes,
talk
sir.
about business entrepreneurship, motivation, and all kinds of things. We'd love to have you back, and we'd love to have your questions. Kyle, any parting points, thoughts?
It sounds like you're running into normal challenges that entrepreneurs should expect. I salute your fortitude and keep the faith, brother.
Let's keep at it. Everyone, we appreciate your time today and hope you have an awesome afternoon. And I'm going to just sign off. Have a great week. And if
All
we can
right.
get the upvotes now in live time, or if you watch our recording later on and we can get some upvotes, we would appreciate your support as we work to get this thing up and going.
Absolutely. We appreciate your time and attention. Have a great one.
And we are